So even though in the grand scheme of things in our PACE plan, our primary is to bug in where we're at. Our alternate contingency and emergency plans, at least in the example that I gave you, and kind of which goes along with my plan, the bug out bag plays kind of an integral role in that. And I guess I should pause there and talk a little bit about the bags. There's a number of different bags within the industry. You'll see EDC, you'll see GHB, you'll see Bob, you'll see good kits, you'll see inch bags. There's a number of different bags out there. And what I'll say is I don't subscribe to that kind of that system, all right? So EDC is the stuff that's in your pockets. It's stuff that you carry with you every day. And really that's designed to use in an emergency so that you're never without some sort of resource. And then a GHB a lot of times is often thought of as a bag that you keep in your car. And the thought process being that my EDC gets me to my vehicle has my GHB, which gets me home. Once I get home, I have my, what's commonly called a Bob, a bug out bag. Some people call it a good kit, a get out of Dodge kit, which has, you know, my emergency supplies so that I can rapidly evacuate an area. And typically it's thought of as something that you can sustain yourself for up to 72 hours with. And then you also have an inch bag, the I'm never coming home bag, which is the folks that think they're going to put all these tools to build a log cabin out of the forest on their back, you know, 75, 80 pounds, really tool heavy type of bag to disappear into the wilderness and never come home. There's a lot of problems with that I have. One of them being that, you know, which bag do you grab in the morning? And where is the incident that we can't predict? Where is that going to happen? Right? Is it going to happen when I'm at the office? Am I going to be in my vehicle? Can I get home to either choose? And when I do get home, if I can, do I choose to grab my Bob or do I grab my inch bag? You know, how do I know? So the bottom line is this, the bag is meant to be a resource. It contains resources that provide for your needs. The needs don't change whether the incident that you're trying to, you know, kind of move away from happens in your office, in your car, at home. It doesn't matter. Your metabolic needs are your metabolic needs. So if I have one bag that provides for all of that needs, it provides for those needs regardless of where I'm at. So if I pack this one bag and I carry it with me every day, then it is everyday carry by definition. It's an EDC bag. If this is in my vehicle, as long as I'm in the vehicle, then it is a get home bag. I can use it to get home if that's what I'm trying to do. If it's sitting at my house when something happens and I need to grab it and go, then it's my go bag, it's my Bob, it's my bug out bag. And the I'm never coming home thing, you know, again, that's something that's so far down the list of what we would even plan to be doing, like to plan to never go home. Like my plan is to go from where I'm at to a safe location that's already stocked. My plan is not to lug 75 to 80 pounds worth of gear to a safe distance away, which could be 50, 100, 200 miles away before I ever got to a location where it would be safe to hack out a log cabin from the forest. Like this, it's not a real plausible plan. So I don't believe in the inch bag concept personally. I believe in one bag. You carry that with you every day. When you're in your office, it's with you. When you're in your car, it's with you. When you're at home, it's there at home. All of the bags should provide for all of your needs. And if one of them doesn't provide for all of your needs, then it's inadequate. It's not really a bag. It's a bag of resources, but it's an inadequate bag of resources. So just the one bag is all I have in my system. But again, this is supplemented by a variety of other things. I have other resources in my house. I have resources in my alternate bug-in location. I have resources in my vehicle that I can use so that I don't have to tap into this. So this is always ready to go if this is all I'm down to. Another important concept with this is that your goal is to get from point A to point B as quickly as you possibly can. So the more weight you have in here, the slower you're going to move, the more your calorie requirement is going to be, the more your water and hydration requirement is going to be. So the heavier this is, the more counterproductive it is to what you're actually trying to do. So keep that in mind. A good goal weight is that your go bag, which is what I consider my Bob, my bug out bag, is just a go bag. I take it with me. If you're going somewhere, take it. Is 10% of my body weight. I weigh about 200 pounds. So as long as I'm 20 pounds or less on this, I'm pretty comfortable that I can carry this for a long distance, cover a lot of distance, and get from point A to point B quicker. Do I subscribe to the 72-hour thing? Not necessarily, but for planning purposes, I try to have 72 hours worth of equipment on my back in my bag. And then within the larger system, I have caches set up along my route, north, south, east, west, whichever direction I'm heading. I have pre-established resupply caches, which are part of this. And that's why I can carry such a light bag, is because I'm not trying to carry everything from point A to point B. I'm trying to get from myself from point A to point B. These are resources that are facilitating that. But if I have 3 days worth of food in here, but approximately 2 days along my route, I have a resupply cache that has more food in it, then I'm going to be able to make it, right? I don't have to carry it and have it with me. I just need to get to where the rest of the resupply is. So keep that in mind. And that's understanding the bigger picture, the bigger system. So I caution you that you look at the bigger system and understand how it all works together, because if you were to just pack a bag with 72 hours of resources, you know, how are you living a week into it? If you don't make it to a cache, or you didn't establish a cache, or you didn't establish a plug-in location, then this is probably not going to be as adequate as you need it to be. So keep in mind the bigger picture. 20% of your body weight. My particular bag, the original one that I made 2 years ago, was about 18 pounds. This one I've added a couple of things to, changed a couple of things. I'm still coming in around 19 pounds. So 19 pounds is still well under my 20-pound limit, which is what my goal weight is for these. So I want to kind of go over what I have in my bag. And what I want you to take away from this is not necessarily the particular gear that I choose, the particular brand that I choose. What I want you to take away from it is, what needs am I trying to provide for with this bag? It can be tempting to try to take all the creature comforts of home and try to pack it to your next location. Understand this is a disaster type thing. This is an emergency type thing. So you don't have to be comfortable. Comfort's not a requirement. You have to stay alive. That's what you're trying to do. So while some things are a great idea, they're good to haves, before you know it, those good to haves have added up to 35 to 45 pounds, and now you can no longer carry it for great distances. And that's detrimental to what your goal is, which is to get from point A to point B. Point B is where you have those resources, those comforts, and you didn't have to carry them there. So I think of it in the context of, what needs am I trying to provide for? And we talked about those before. That's core temperature control with my clothing selection, my fire, my shelter. I'm also I need the ability to navigate, actually hydrate, consume calories. I need to be able to navigate, take care of first aid emergencies that I may have. I need the ability to signal if I wanted to signal, and also need tools to facilitate all of that. So as long as I understand what priorities I'm trying and needs that I'm trying to provide for, I can pack resources that help me provide for those needs. But again, the important thing is to understand what I'm providing for with this equipment, more so than the brands and the particular gear that I choose. If you have another brand that you prefer, or another tool that you prefer that you're used to that works for you, that's great. Use that. I'm just showing you what's in my bag and what I'm packing it for. Whenever I'm choosing a bag, I do like to keep in mind kind of the gray man principle, but I'm not so gung-ho about the gray man principle that everything has to be gray. It's not an all or nothing thing. When possible, I want to choose things that are not going to make me stand out. But there are certain things that I'm not as worried about that. It's when possible, you should try to choose things that don't really stick out, like a military backpack with all kinds of MOLLE strips on it and pouches on the outside and morale pack, like that just draws attention. So I want something that's a little more kind of streamlined, and I want something that looks civilian. It looks like a civilian backpack. Having said that, when I was over in Afghanistan and Iraq, I used Mystery Ranch as a brand quite often, and I've carried loads that are 125 pounds plus comfortably with these. So they're really well made. So durability is something I'm looking for. So this particular pack from Mystery Ranch is the one that I'm running these days. It still looks like a civilian pack. It just happens to be gray. That's not because I'm going gray man. It just happens to be gray because that's just not really a military associated color. And it's very streamlined. Everything's kind of contained inside. It doesn't really stick out that much in a crowd. It looks very unassuming. So this is the Urban Assault 24, and this is plenty big enough for my 19-pound bug out bag. Extremely durable, extremely well made, and very, very comfortable, so that I can carry it over an extended period for long distances, and I'm not going to get uncomfortable, which is kind of a key concept to getting from point A to point B. So it starts with the Urban Assault 24, which is a great pack that I highly recommend. But again, it doesn't have to be this one. You can use whatever one you're comfortable with. This is the one that I choose to use. So that's what it starts with, is the pack. From the pack, you know, thinking about the needs that I need to provide for, I break that down into the priorities, into the needs that I'm trying to provide for. Core temperature control is obviously the first thing that I'm trying to provide for. So in a survival situation, you know, starting a fire is not that big of a deal. From a prepper's perspective, from a preparedness perspective, you may be in a situation where you don't want to start a fire. So there is a such thing as a permissive and a non-permissive environment, and you need to understand kind of the situation that you're in. Permissive environment means it doesn't really matter if you're seen, if you're found, if it doesn't matter. You're just providing for your needs like everyone else out there. It's not a particularly dangerous in the sense that if somebody finds you or locates you, that you need to worry about your safety. Whereas a non-permissive is the opposite of that. A non-permissive means that you're kind of using a little more stealth. You're trying not to be seen. You're trying not to be found. So the way that you provide for your core temperature, your body core temperature, and control that is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so for a non-permissive environment, fire is probably not your best idea. It's probably not a good idea, right? Unless you're in an extremely cold weather environment and you need the fire, you probably should not rely on that. In a non-permissive environment, your chances are, of course, appropriate clothing for both non-permissive and permissive, but in a non-permissive environment, you're going to rely very heavily on your shelter system to maintain your body's core temperature. But fire kit, you know, even if you're in this situation and you're relying on your shelter kit, if conditions get so bad that you need to start a fire, you need to have the ability to do that. All right, this is kind of your last ditch effort to maintain that body core temperature if it gets down to that. So you need to have that ability. All right, so we'll look at the fire kit first, and I like to have 3 different methods of ignition. All right, so the first one and the primary one should be just a normal Bic lighter. Okay. That's the easiest way to get a flame. That doesn't mean you get a fire. You need to be able to put all of this together into a fire lay using tinder, resources, etc. But you know, the easiest is the Bic lighter. You should not be relying on primitive methods in this type of emergency. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. So Bic lighter is one ignition source, should be your primary. A couple of things that happen to a Bic lighter oftentimes is, especially when they're sitting in your kit, is, you know, a lot of times this little red button will get depressed and the gas will leak out. You'll go to use it and it'll be out of fuel, which is a bad thing. Another thing that could happen, and there's a lot of small moving parts in here, is this could get stepped on, it could get broken. You throw your bag down in the car, it drops out of the back and it breaks, you know. So I like to keep mine in a very simple Exotac case. This is an Exotac fire sleeve. That solves both of those problems. It has a cap on it that keeps the gas lever from being depressed and leaking all the gas out, and it also provides some impact resistance and protects the lighter. So that's why I choose to keep that on there, and this is a lot more high vis if you don't happen to have an orange lighter. So that's why that is on there. That's my primary means of making a fire in an emergency. My secondary, you know, because these are not exactly the most durable thing in the world, I can't count on making one of these for, you know, years. They're not going to last for years. But something that will last for a very long time is a ferrocerium rod. A big 3/8 to 1/2 inch diameter by 5 to 6 inch ferro rod is the best way to go. This is a really easy way, if you know how to use one, to make a fire, and it's extremely durable. There's no moving parts. It doesn't matter if it gets wet. None of that matters. So that is kind of my second choice for an ignition source. Another thing that's often overlooked that may come in handy is by using solar. This is a simple wallet Fresnel lens, and if you know how to use these and the sun is shining, this is a really effective way of starting a fire. What I like most about this, and why I think it's important to have in a go bag, a bug out bag, is that if you have the ability to use this, you're taking nothing from your kit. You're not taking anything from your resources. As long as the sun's out, you can continue to use this without depleting any other resource. Whereas, you know, eventually you will work through this. If it becomes a long-term situation, you can't resupply these, you can't replenish these, eventually this will run out. Granted, it's going to be a long time, but this one is probably going to run out first, so I like to back those up with other means. So for me, if I'm starting a fire in an emergency, I'm using the open flame ignition source. If it's sunny and it's not really an emergency, but I still need to get a fire, if I can, I'm going to use this Fresnel lens because I'm going to save the rest of my resources. And if it's not sunny, I'm going to go with a ferro rod. That's the 3 ignition sources that I choose to keep in all of my kits, including my go bag. So those are your ignition sources. Because in this type of environment, the chances of me starting a fire are pretty slim unless it's an actual emergency, because I'm not wanting to draw attention to myself. If it is an actual emergency, you want something that you can get a fire going right now, really quick. You don't want to have to spend a lot of time that you could be making progress from point A to point B. You don't want to spend a lot of time running around gathering natural resources, even though you can. If you find natural resources as you're moving, obviously put those in your pocket. But I like to use, you know, some sort of man-made tinder that's ready to go so I can get a fire going really easily. And what I've been carrying for probably the past year or so are called mini infernos. These are basically a cotton round that is soaked in an accelerant. And then that entire thing is dipped into a paraffin wax, which solidifies around it, seals that accelerant in there. So whenever it's time to use one of these, you just break those open, expose some of those fibers, and it'll take, obviously it'll take open flame and it'll take a spark. So that is an awesome resource to have in your kit to use in an emergency to get a fire going quickly. There's several in here, and it comes with a reusable tin. So I like that for a number of reasons. When these start going low, I can char natural material in this and I can use that. A lot of different things you can do with a tin. Another thing that I like to use kind of as a secondary light source for doing things in the evening, if I'm not so worried about drawing a lot of attention to myself, that also makes a valuable fire resource, is a simple beeswax candle. Now these are 4-hour nano candle tins from Exotac. Each one of these little tins will burn for 4 hours. And it just gives me a small light source or a method of drying out natural tinder to get it going. And I can also use the candle as a lighter extender. Rather than, if I have some marginal tinder, rather than use my lighter to sit there and hold it, and 10, 15 seconds into it, I'm still trying to dry it out, I'm wasting the fuel in this resource. I can just take a couple of seconds and I can light that candle, save the fuel in this, and then I can use this candle to light what I'm trying to light, put it out, and close it up, and I basically have conserved this as much as possible. Really handy to have in your kit, so I recommend those for your fire kit. I've got 12 hours of light in here, and of course this is not something you're going to burn all night long, but having a couple of these tins in your kit is a good idea. So that is the Exotac candle tin 4-hour nano candles, and those are beeswax. So beeswax is useful for a lot of other things as well. Stuck zipper, chapped lips, a lot of different things that you can use it for. Keeping your carbon steel knives from rusting, a lot of different things. So very valuable resource to have in there. And of course you can reuse the tin for other things. So that's kind of the fire kit. For my shelter kit, every shelter kit starts with, basically has the same things. You have something to sleep under, you have something to sleep on, you have something to sleep in, and then you have some cordage to kind of put all that together. And not much has changed for this over the last couple of years. I still like the same, I like the system I had in place, and that's what I continue to use. Understand this too, I can't possibly give you a shelter kit that's going to work for every single environment, every single weather condition. That's not possible. So again, I'll reiterate, I want you to focus on the components more so than what I'm actually putting in here. All right. For my system, because I live in a very cold area, a lot of what I carry is not applicable to someone that lives in the southeastern United States or lives out in the desert. It's not applicable. However, something to sleep under, something to sleep on, something to sleep in, and some cordage is applicable everywhere. It's just you may need different components to provide for those needs in your particular kit. But a good baseline kit, something to sleep under. I like to use the military style ponchos. This particular one is from Helicon Tex. It's been one of the best ponchos that I've had outside of the military. And the reason I like the poncho is because it's actually two pieces of kit in one, okay? If I'm on the move, on the go, and it's wet weather, this poncho will keep me dry, and I can drape it over my backpack to keep the contents of my backpack dry. And if I'm stationary, then I can actually produce my shelters with this by making poncho shelters. A lot of different configurations that I'll show you with those. That is why I choose this, is because it's dual purpose. And it packs away really nicely. So that's something to sleep under to protect me from the elements. Something to sleep in, kind of like I used in the military, was just a simple military poncho liner. This is a Whoopee, all right? A lot of days, a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, a lot of time in the military that I had was spent in nothing more than wrapped up in a poncho liner with a poncho around me, just in what we call a Ranger burrito. So even in a quick nap, and I don't have time to set anything up, or maybe I found a natural shelter, I can wrap up in both of those and sleep fairly comfortably in a lot of different places. Obviously not in the winter in the Adirondacks, I'm not gonna do that, but it's a good baseline. So something to sleep under, something to sleep in, something to sleep on. I still go with the Snugpak SF Bivy. It's very small, it's lightweight, and this is basically a Gore-Tex cover, if you will. That's kind of like a mummy liner kind of thing, that you can put around the whole kit and caboodle. But the other thing about this that I like is that something to sleep on. I can stuff this with browse like leaves or any other sort of kind of soft debris to kind of contain that, and I can make a browse mattress, lay on top of that. That's going to prevent conduction with the ground, and it's a real small package. I can also add this to the Ranger burrito, wrap the entire thing up in that, and it's going to protect me even that much more against the elements. So I think the versatility of a small bivy sack is a good thing, and that's why I continue to choose to put that in my baseline kit. That's my sleep under, sleep in, sleep on system. Then I like to have cordage to kind of put it all together. And one of the main components of my shelter system I call the rapid ridgeline. Right? This is a ridgeline system that is easy to deploy, easy to take down, and it's pre-cut, kind of hanked so that it comes out quickly. And I can do, 3 different shelter configurations depending on the weather conditions off of this really quickly. This is just about 25 to 30 feet of paracord and some number 36 bank line. All right, so that's my main ridge line that I use for a number of different shelters. And then the rest of my cordage, I'm just using number 36 bank line. And I'm choosing bank line over more paracord because paracord tends to have a more slick outer sheath, so it doesn't hold knots as well. This is tarred mariner's line, bank line. This has kind of a sticky tar on it, so it holds knots really well. It's a thinner diameter, so it's not quite as strong. This is normally 550 pound test. Number 36 is normally around 300 to 350 pound test. But when I'm establishing a shelter, just because paracord is stronger does not mean that this isn't strong enough. 350 pound test is plenty strong enough for a lot of the applications that I'm using it for. So I choose this because it holds knots better. It's a lot smaller in diameter, so I can carry more length in a smaller package, and it's going to be a lot more lightweight. So those are my cordage, my cordages of choice, just a ridge line, a dedicated ridge line. The rest I do with number 36 bank line. And this actually is made up of 3 individual strands. So if I needed smaller stuff for gear repair or for fishing or for trap components, I can break this apart into 3 smaller strands that still have a tensile strength of about 100 pounds each. So that's plenty For fishing, that's plenty for sewing. I just think this is a better cord overall. Bank line is my choice, but I still do like to have a more robust ridge line dedicated with that 550 paracord. So those are the cordages. And then kind of, I guess, the difference between like a survival situation, bushcraft type of thing is I can make tent stakes while I'm out there. It's very simple. They take just a few minutes, but that's one more thing that I have to worry about. And for me personally, I just don't think it's worth not carrying these because they just don't take up enough space or cost me enough weight to justify leaving these back and then carving stakes out in the field. Because the first night that I carve these in the field, I'm going to carry them the next 2 nights anyway. I'm not going to throw those stakes away and continue to make them as I move closer and closer to my alternate bug-in location. So to me, having a lightweight, these are titanium, these are MSR groundhogs, having a lightweight tent stakes is a time saver, it's a convenience thing. Will you die without them? Of course not. Can you make them in the field? Of course you can. Me personally, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on that. So I'll carry 6 of these and all of my shelters can be made with those 6. So that is my shelter kit. So we've talked about a fire kit, we've talked about our shelter kit, and of course the clothing and appropriate clothing for the environment and the conditions you're in. That is what you're using to maintain your core body temperature. With our core temperature under control with our fire and shelter kit, the next kit and the next priority that we need to talk about is hydration. You have to stay hydrated, especially when you're moving long distances. And and a lot of environments are more important than others, but hydration is important even in the winter. So the water kit that I choose to carry these days is, one, you need a method of procuring it, you need a method of storing it, but you also need a way to disinfect it so that it's safe to drink. You're going to questionable water sources. So what my kit consists of is primarily I'm going to be filtering water from these water sources because this is something I need to do quick. I don't want to rely on having to make a fire and boil every time I need to drink. So carrying a dedicated filter is a good idea. The filter that I've been using for probably the last year is the Grail GeoPress. What I like about this is not only does it filter, but it's also its own container. So it gives me additional capacity to carry more water than I used to carry when I only carried just the 32-ounce stainless steel water bottle. So that is an outstanding piece of gear. And what I can do is when I get up to a water source, I can filter. Once the water's filtered, I can fill up my 32-ounce container, and then I can leave this full, and I've got 2 containers of water. So that's primarily what I'm going to be doing. If I had to, I could also boil water because my other container is a single-walled stainless steel container. This is the Pathfinder stainless steel 32-ounce, and that comes with a nesting cup with a lid. All right, so that's all part of the same water system, but I could also use this to cook in. I can make medicinals in this if I want to go down that road. I can make charred material in this. I can make charred material with these 2. So this entire system works together really well. But it starts with being able to filter water to make it safe to drink and store enough of it to move from point A to point B. If you're in the desert, you probably need more water more often because you don't have as readily available freshwater sources as I'm used to having in the Northeast and the eastern woodlands. So this is plenty for me. You may need to carry more water bottles, but you can still filter all of that with this, fill all of those with that, and leave some water in here so that you are as topped off as possible between water sources. Another thing that I kind of include in that kit, even though it's more versatile than just for water, is a cotton shemagh. All right, this is a 3 foot by 3 foot piece of cotton material. That can be used for a number of things. It can be used, in the capacity of the fire kit. You can actually use this to make char cloth if you don't have any natural material that you can char. That makes all your subsequent fires that much easier. In the context of shelter, especially if you're in a hot day, you can drape this over yourself and kind of keep the sun from beating down on the back of your neck. So you can cool yourself off with this. You can get this wet and wrap it around your neck and take advantage of that evaporative cooling. So in that way, it's kind of part of the shelter kit as well. Of course, it's part of the water kit because I can use this to place over. If I don't want to filter this, I can use this to place over water in a stream and pre-filter that. which is really, a redundancy considering I have this. But if I don't want to clog this filter and I want to pre-filter the water before I put it in the container, I can do that. It's just really handy to have for that. And then of course, we haven't talked about the first aid yet, but cotton material is very valuable for bandaging, for an improvised tourniquet, a number of reasons. So I keep it in the water kit categorically, but it's not limited to the water kit. But a cotton shamag is a great addition to your water kit. With your hydration taken care of, then we can talk a little bit about consuming calories, because we talked about needing to have energy to get from point A to point B. You're going to burn a lot of calories. You're exposed to the elements, you're under stress, you're moving from point A to point B. So you need to be able to consume calories. What you don't want to do is have to hunt for food. You don't want to have to stop and trap. You don't want to have to stop and actively fish. And then if you do catch something, you would have to actually start a fire to cook it or preserve it so that you can move on. So in this type of emergency, those skills are valuable to have, but they should not be your primary means of consuming calories. That's why I like to carry some sort of pre-made ration that doesn't require any cooking. And I still like to go with the SOS emergency food rations. These are very small. They're very small packages. They're very simple. You just break out the bars and you eat them, and it gives you some calories. You can do that while you're on the go. You don't have to stop to prepare anything. So these are valuable. This is a 3,600 calorie bar. So this can get you a couple days up the road before you need to replenish. And again, food is not all that. It's not the most important thing, but having energy to get from point A to point B, that's the important thing. So there's no reason to not pack any sort of food whatsoever and just count on making it to your location when you can carry something as simple as an emergency ration. So SOS emergency food rations, definitely recommend that as part of your food kit. Could you carry a fishing kit? Could you carry a trapping kit? Sure. But what you have to understand is, in order for you to trap and actively fish, you're going to have to spend time doing that you could be spending just getting to your alternate bug-in location where you have food. So it's kind of counterproductive. So I personally choose not to carry anything like that in my baseline bug-out kit. But if you want to carry that stuff because you have a lot of resources that you could tap into by using that, and it's not going to slow you down from getting from point A to point B, then by all means, that's your choice. But I choose not to do that. So that's kind of all I have for my food kit in a bug out bag. It's just some quick calories, give me some quick energy. Point A to point B is what I'm focused on. Speaking of point A to point B, you want to get there as efficiently as possible. So that is where your navigation kit comes in, and the ability to navigate comes in, okay? For navigating, obviously you want to have a map of your area or be extremely familiar with your area. At a minimum, you would need a compass. Right? I recommend the Sunto MC2 compass because it has a lot of other functions. It has a magnifying lens that I can use as part of my fire kit to start a fire using charred natural material or charred cloth. It also has a mirror that I could use for signaling, and I can also use it for first aid applications for things like if I get something in my eye or on my face that I can't see, I can use that in a kind of a first aid application. So aside from that, it's obviously used to walk a straight line, get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. So I love the Sunto MC2 compass. I also use these pace beads. All right, these pace cords, if you're not familiar with those, sometimes people call them ranger beads, but rangers don't call them ranger beads. We just call them pace beads. But that gives you the ability to keep track of distance traveled as you're counting that with your pace count. You're basically counting steps from point A to point B. So every one of these is 100 meters, and then every one of these is 1,000 meters, and you just kind of reset. So beyond the scope of this, but a compass and pace beads, extremely important. I do recommend having a map. I get all of my maps from MyTopo USA, and I think it's mytopousa.com. But that's where I get all my maps from. So if you need a map of your particular area, that's where you can get them. You can get them in MGRS, that grid reference system. You can get them in UTM. You can get them in lat long, whatever you want. So recommend you have those. If you're compass does not have the ability and it doesn't have scales, and you can't use that as a protractor to determine coordinates and translate that map coordinate, then you may need to carry a protractor. If your compass does have that, you don't necessarily need this if you know how to do that, but that is part of a nav kit. The other thing I'd recommend is a couple of mechanical pencils and some waterproof paper, a waterproof notebook. Right? This allows you to record things. This allows you to make updates to your map, take notes, keep track of a lot of different things. And yes, you could use a regular pencil, and that regular pencil could be used, and because you can resharpen it and all that. In the military, we use nothing but mechanical pencils. Not so much that they're more durable, but because the point is a lot finer. And when you're talking about navigation, you want precision from point A to point B. So when I'm plotting coordinates, I want as fine a point as possible. I don't want a big fat point because it's going to make it less efficient. So I always carry mechanical pencils as part of my navigation kit. The goal is to get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. And that is the navigation kit.